This is Gemara in Gittin, Daf Tes Zayin, and today's share has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos refuah shlema for someone very close and dear to us, as a schos refuah shlema from Moshe Yisrael ben Liba. V'siyata d'shemaya, everything should go well and should have a complete recovery in the schos of the Torah berabim Talmud Torah keneged kulam, should bring Moshe Yisrael ben Liba to a complete recovery. And we pick it up approximately 10 lines from the bottom of Tezvavim Abeis, Ba'i Ilfa. Ilfa asked a Shaila, another Shaila, for one who's not been following, which is none of you, will seem a bit random, but as we know, it's about the previous discussion, which is connecting two things, which began with the discussion of connecting the Kiyum with the Eidos, with the Fani Nechtav. It continued with the Mitzdarif of creating a Mechitza, and now asks Zilfa a bit of a sidebar din. 10 lines on the bottom. First one line is Zilfa, Yodayim tahiris l'chatzayin or ein tahiris l'chatzayin? Are you able to be mitaher, purify your hands? And of course, this really is very relevant. This goes all the way down to one washing their hands until Yodayim for bread. Is it possible to be done in half or not? Says the Gemara, what is the case? Number one, you got to know the case before you try to figure out what's going on. So says the Gemara, Heichidami. If two people are washing from one revius, but we learned in a Mishnah, the Mishnah teaches us that even two people could wash their hands from one revius. So what would the shaila be? Seemingly it's explicit that it should work. Ella, so rather, what must the case be? Kamashi chado yodei. One guy is washing his hands. V'atanan, but we learned in the Mishnah, until yodei achas b'netila. If you wash one hand you wash. V'achas b'shtifa, and one hand you rinse off. Yodav tahirais. In this case as well, we learned that yodav tahirais. We learned that it works. So this case is also explicit. Again, and shtifa means you dip it into the mikvah. Anyone who's following the smichas chaver, the halacha shirim that were given, we just spoke about this in the previous year. They could potentially be toivel. When one wants to wash for bread, a little known halacha, you could stick your hands into the mikvah. One hand with washing, one hand in the mikvah, that works. So says the Gemara, ve'ela, kamashi, you know what Ilfa's shaila was? Kamashi palga diyadei. You're washing half of each hand. Says the Gemara, it's also pashit. You're not able to mitar your hands in half. So says the Gemara, you know what Ilfa's question was? 2 lines to the bottom. That your hand is wet, and even though we just said you cannot purify your hands in halves, but if your hand is wet, that's going to be the question. What is a mashka tefeach? It means your hands are wet enough that if you touch something else, that other item will get wet. For example, this cup over here, on the outside, this is called tefeach. When I touch it, my finger has a drop of wetness on it. That is called tefeach. Says the Gemara, who cares? What does that make a difference? But we learned in a Mishnah, but we learned in a Mishnah that a stream of liquid or a steep slope, or something that has enough liquid to make the other entity wet. In all of these 3 cases, what is the halacha? It is not considered to be connected. It's not considered to be a connection. So seemingly it's pashut as well, that having enough liquid to make something else wet is not enough to connect the 2 entities. Answers the Gemara, you know what the case is? That the hand is wet enough to make something else wet, then that item will now be able to make something else wet. What does that mean? Let's explain what this means. But this cup, as we explained, if I go like this to the cup, my finger gets wet. How much wetness does my finger get? So now, as the cup is getting colder and there's more liquid on the outside, when I go like this, my finger gets wet, and my finger, it's hard to see, but my finger is wet enough now to make something else wet. That's called tefeach le'atfiach. The first level of wetness is something is wet to make something else wet. And now we have a level of wetness that it's wet to make something else wet that could wet something else. It is toifeach, it makes wet. Al minas latfiach, it makes something else wet. So the hand is, half of the hand is toifeach al minas latfiach, and then you wash the other half. Is that allowed? That is the shaila of ilfa. Says the Gemara, Hanami Tanina. We know this as well. Toifeach latfiach chibur, that if it's that wet, it does, yes, connect. So says the Gemara, what is the shaila of ilfa? Finally, the Gemara concludes, Delma le'inyan mikvahis. You know what the shaila is with regarding to mikvahis. V'Rav Yehudi, that what? It's now we learned in the Mishnah. Mikvah shish ba'arban sa. If I have a mikvah that is 40 sa with mechuvanois, exactly, which is the minimum size of a mikvah, I have precisely 40 sa. V'yardu shnayim v'tavlu. 2 people go into this mikvah. Bizach or Zef, they both go in, one guy goes in, comes out. Next guy goes in, comes out. Risha, the first guy is Tahar. Vasheni Tameh. The second one is Tameh. Why is the second one Tameh? Because we assume that the first guy, when he comes out, there's a little bit of liquid on his body. That little bit of liquid now makes that the resulting mikvah does not have a complete 40 sa. Therefore, the second guy will be Tameh. Rav Yehuda Omer says, Rav Yehuda, Raglav shel Risha Nagas b'mayim. If the first guy comes out and he's still standing with his feet connected to the mikvah, then the second guy goes in. Says Rav Yehuda, Af Hasheni Tar. In this case, even the second guy will be tar. Why will the second guy be tar in this case? The reason is because the first guy's body is wet enough to ve'ach manas latfiach. So it connects it to the mikvah water. So that's enough of a connection, says Rav Yehuda, to allow the other person to be taivel as well. So says the Gemara, Ilfa Shaila was that maybe this is only a din tavech amanas latviach, is only a din in mikvah, like we see according to Rav Yehuda, he holds a din in mikvah. But maybe, according to maybe if it's non-mikvah, like in our case of washing your hands, maybe you'll have a different halacha. That was the shaila of ilfa, which we don't actually answer. Continues the Gemara 10 lines down. First one line is Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Hare Amru, Hava Roishe V'Rubai Mamayim Shuv. And if someone goes, it's out of the majority of the body in drawn water, like a shower, and this is after he comes out of the mikvah, he goes into a shower, or Vitar, someone who is tar, Shnafla Roishe V'Rubai Shleisha Lugin Mayim Shuvim, that he went into the shower, that he had drawn water pour on him. The halacha is, in these cases, he is tamei. Why? Din d'Rabbanan. What's the din d'Rabbanan? That we're worried that people are going to think that the drawn water is that which is going to make him tar, which isn't true. Parenthetically, this is where it comes from, a known halacha, perhaps a little bit of a misquoted halacha, but it is known nonetheless, that one is not supposed to shower after coming out of the mikvah. Why? For this reason. A gezeira d'Rabbanan, that we're worried people are going to think that it's the shower that made you tahar and not the mikvah. So why do I say it's misquoted? Because number one, it's only by a real tefillah, which is a woman and not a man. So a man can for sure shower. Number two, even by a woman, most poskim hold, it's only in the mikvah house. But once a woman comes home from the mikvah, she's allowed to shower. Some want to be machmer and say she shouldn't shower the whole night. And that's what many kalas are taught. But it is important to know, if it bothers a woman, which many women, it does bother them, they're allowed to shower that night. Certainly after there was some level of intimate connection between them and their husband. But it is important to know, Rav Elyashiv was mekel even in the mikveh house to shower if one needs, for the reasons that we're not getting involved in right now. Continues the Gemara by Rav Yirmiyah, 10 lines in the bottom. What's the halacha if half of the body went into the mikvah and half of the body had water poured on it, meaning half the body had drawn water on it, half the body had drawn water poured on it? Is there the same gezerah? Mai? Says the Gemara, Teiku, we're not sure. Amar Papa, Hare Amru, Balkari, Chayla Shinaslav Tishakam Mayim, Tar. A Balkari, one who has a seminal emission, is Tar Midrabanan. Ezra made a takana that he has to go to the mikvah before learning Torah, before tefillah. Again, this is a takana that did not last, that we paskin, you do not need to be mitar from kari. There is a chumrah, says the Mishnah Berurah, but does not actual. But says Rabba, for a chayla, he's allowed to have tisha kabin, 9 kav of water poured onto him. which is basically a 4 or 5 minute shower. Would it work if you did half in the mikvah and half with the water? Says the Gemara, teku as well. We continue 4 lines from the bottom, quoting the Mishnah. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Yechanan. Loishanu, they did in the Mishnah that said that in this case the get is apostle. Again, one guy says it was written in my presence b'fani nechtav. One guy says b'fani nechtam, it was signed in my presence, it's apostle. Loishanu al she'ein ageh yoytzi mitachas yidei shnehem. This is only if the 2 people here in Bezdin are not actually holding the get. Aval get yoytzi mitachas yidei shnehem, then it is kosher. Interesting to note before we turn over the page. Rashi learns that the case is that they're both holding the document. They're actually holding the document. What is interesting is that Taisus comes along over here, and Taisus says that which Rashi says that they're both holding the document doesn't mean they actually have to hold the document, because it doesn't really make a difference if they're holding the paper. But rather, says Taisus, the critical ingredient is whether they're both shluchim. If they're both shluchim, that's the case that it's going to be kosher. Says the Gemara, why is it going to be kosher on top of Tezayinum at base? Alma Kasavar, what do we hold? Shnayim Shavia Gamdinasiyam, if 2 people bring a get, Ain't Zrichen, Sheyoymar, B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam. And of course, this harkens us back to the world of Rabbah and Rava, the world of Daf Beis. As the Gemara now, this was one of the nafkaminos between Rava and Rava. And says the Gemara right now, we see from over here, we see from this din of Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Rav Yechanan, that we would not require 2 people to bring a get to say b'fanai nechtam, and that's why he's saying that if they're both holding it, then you lamaisa don't have to say b'fanai nechtam. Says the Gemara, Amalei Abaya, asks Abaya 1 second, 3 lines down to Zayin base. Elameyato asks Abaya, Sefer Tikatani Shtayim Shem b'fanai nechtav. 2 people said they saw the get written. One says b'fani nechtam, it is possible, but Rabbi Yehuda Machshvi says it's kosher. Taima comes out. What is the reason why the Tanakhama said it's Taima? What's the case that they're not both holding the get? But if they're both holding the get, Machshvi Rabbanan, the Tanakhama says it's possible only in the case that they're both not holding the get. But seemingly, if they both would be holding the get, then the Tanakhama would hold it's indeed kosher. Is that true? Amar Lei responds, I agree with you. If they're both holding the get, the Tanakhama, the Chachamim, would indeed hold it is kosher. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So it comes out that we have a machlokes in the Mishnah, even in a case where they're not both holding it. What's the machlokes? Mar Savar seemingly Gazrinan. There's a new gezerah when 2 people bring a get that they're not holding. That even though we have 2 people in front of us, but since they're not both shluchim, we have to be worried that if we allow this case to work, they're going to come to mistakenly think other cases of kiyum sharas could work beid achad with 1 aid, which of course we know is not true. You need 2 aidim. Omar Savar and Rav Yehuda holds it kosher, holds loy gazrinon. So explains the Gemara, the machlokes Tanakama and Rav Yehuda is going to be whether we make gzera in this case. Continues the Gemara, or about 12 lines down. The first line is gazrinon. Lishna achrina. Another way of learning what we just said. Omar, and of course it's going to be the reverse. Omar lo Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda Rav Yechanan, says Rav Shmuel Yehuda Rav Yechanan again. So Lishna achrina for the whole Gemara, starting from the bottom of Tezayin Amidal. Even if the get is being held by both of them, pasul. Now we're learning that it's going to be pasul in this case, even that they're both holding it, or even that they're both shluchim. Says the Gemara, Alma Kasavar, what do we see? So seemingly, the reason why it's going to be pasul is because you didn't say Fani Nechtav. So now we have a raya that when 2 people bring the get, what's the halacha? You need to say Fani Nechtav, and since you did not, that's why it's going to be pasul. But now ask the Abaye say if the end of the Mishnah that says 2 said we saw it written, 1 said we saw it signed. Pasul and review does machshir. The math comes out that the Rabbanan who are holding its pasul is even in a case that they're both holding it. Is that true? Amrlein, correct, even if they're both holding, it's going to be basel. So now, but my comifti, what is the machlekes that Tanakam are holding that when they two people holding a get, it's basel? Rav Yehuda's holding when two people holding a get, it's kosher. Says the Gemara, you know what the machlekes is? Hopefully you should sound familiar. Marsa that Tanakam holds levishein b'kiyam lishma. Very good that two people are bringing it, but he holds like a rabba that we need to have lishma, and there's not lishma. Marsa and Rav Yehuda holds no. Levishein edim mitzuyin lekaima. The whole reason you have any nechtav is for kiyam, and lamaisa you have two people bring the get, and therefore is going to be kiyam. So says the Gemara, the machlekes Tanakam and Rav Yehuda and our Mishnah is the machlekes Rabba and Rava, which of course is very shver. Ask the Gemara, lema de Rabba v'Rava Tanai. We never want a scenario that Amoraim, Rabba and Rava, are arguing about the same thing that Tanaim or the Rabban and Rav Yehuda argued about. She says the Gemara, is this accurate that Rabba and Rava are arguing about the same thing? Says the Gemara about 20 lines down from the bottom, the first one line is loi. No, it's not accurate. Rava mitaretz klishna kama. So Rava, who holds of kiyam, is going to hold like the lishna kama, that when two people bring it, it's going to be kosher because of kiyam. And why the Rabbanan are going to hold its pasul? The Rabbanan are going to hold its pasul because of a gzeira. You might come to confuse it with other stories. The Rabba, Amar Lachan, Rabba is going to say no. The Kuli Amabinu Lishma. Rabba says, really, everyone knows of Lishma. V'hacha b'may yaskina, what's the case over here? La'achar shelamdu, as we've already learned, that everyone really knew about the din of Lishma. So then what's the potential concern? Why would the Chachamim hold its pasul? You know the machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim is, do we make a gezerah that perhaps we have to be concerned it's going to go back to the original status that people are not going to know. Therefore, we still require b'fanei nechtav. Demar savar Tanakama holds gazrinon, and therefore the get is possible without fanei nechtav. Umar savar yudos like gazrinon. Says the Gemara, if this is true, v'lif like nami Rav Yehuda bereisha. So then this din of Rav Yehuda is not isolated anything having to do with the seifa. This reason why Rav Yehuda is saying it's kosher is because there's no gzeira. This should also be in the reisha of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, indeed you are correct. And if you remember when we read the Mishnah, we said even though it sounds like Rav Yehuda is arguing on the seifa, we're going to get to this, and here it is. We learned Amar Ula Chalak Rav Yehuda af barishayna. Rav Yehuda argues in all cases. So Maser Rav Aisha Leula Rav Yehuda Machsher Bezu V'loi Ba'acheres. Says Rav Aisha to Ula, there's a bracelet that says Rav Yehuda is only Machsher in this case. V'loi Ba'acheres. So says the Gemara, it seemingly seems that he doesn't argue in the first case. My lav lemute echram b'fanei nechtav echram b'fanei nechtam. Says the Gemara, loi. No, it doesn't mean that. Lemute b'fanei nechtam avaloi b'fanei nechtav. So what would the chiddush be? An interesting chiddush. Sal kedei techamina. I would have thought Rav Yehuda because we're going within the world. Rav Yehuda holds that there's no gezerah. That's why it's kosher, and therefore lachar shalom do after everyone knows the din of the Shema. We don't have to be worried about vanei nechtav. So maybe we also don't have to be worried that they might come to think that you're going to confuse this with other kiyam sharas. Maybe like Rav Yehuda holds you don't make this gezerah, he holds you don't make that gezerah either. Kamash Malon, that is not true. And Rav Yehuda holds that indeed we make the gezerah in the first case. And with that, we're going to stop over here. We'll pick it up from Itmar Nami in the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.